Hello everyone, AZ Flyer here, and in this video we're going to continue our setup of our new airplane. So far we've installed the receiver into the airplane, and we have our mixes all set up so we can see that we have our ailerons working normally. We've got our elevator working and our rudder, and in the last video we set up landing gear. The landing gear is all working. So now it's time to set up the flaps. So now the flaps are not as easy as an aileron. It's a little more involved, but it's really not anything to fret about if you've walked through it and seen how it's done. So that's what we're gonna do now. I have decided to put my flaps on this switch right here. And I've already got a call out to it. So this is gonna be my flaps switch. So we're gonna go to our mixes tile. So we're gonna hit the airplane menu, go to the model screen, and we're gonna tap on mixer. And you see when we set up a new airplane, it always comes with this flaps mix already set up. And it's set to channel 5. So I've got it to channel 5 in my receiver. So we're gonna tap on that. We're gonna edit that mix. If you have it, it's already named flaps. Our active condition is going to be always on. So unless for some reason you don't want your flaps always on. And our input then, we're gonna tap on that and we're gonna click the switch that we want our flaps to be on. So we're gonna put them on this channel right here. So now I've got the flaps set in, and you hear it click a little bit. So if I hit the switch, you'll see I get a little bit of movement.
Flaps down, flaps half, flaps up.
What we're seeing is we're not getting a lot of throw, and it's also backwards. So as I pull flaps up, the flaps are going down. So now is our time to go in and actually set up the mix to make it do what I want it to do. Okay, there are going to be a few things we need to do as we set up our flaps. Number one is check the direction again. So I'm backwards, so I'm going to need to go in and invert that so my switch is working and moving the flaps in the right direction. That's one thing. Second thing is we need to check our weight. If you notice here on my flaps, my weight is only at 30%. So, if I want to get 100% of my signal going to that servo, then that weight's going to need to be turned up. And then the third thing is I need to set up a curve so that my flaps are getting enough throw to meet what it is I want to do. So that's where I set up how much I want my flap deflection to actually be. So a word of caution here. So as we turn this 30% up to 100% and invert, it's possible that you can overdrive that servo if it's going the wrong, going too far. So we need to be a little careful there. Obviously, there's some, we just need to take a little bit of caution with that. So I'm going to come down to this 30% here. I'm going to turn that up to about 70% when I do my invert, just to make sure that I'm not like super overstressing that servo. So this is just for my reversing. And if you might remember, if you want to reverse the servo, reverse the direction, then we go to our output screen. We select our channel there, and we're going to tap on invert. And invert now, I'm going the right direction. So when I'm flaps down on my switch, and so I'm down all the way.
Flaps half, flaps up.
So you can see my curve isn't right because I'm at flaps half, I'm almost completely up, and I'm overdriving that servo. So we're going to go into our mixer channel now and set up the curve so that we get this thing in the direction that we want to get it in. So we're going to go to our mixer screen, and we're going to go to the curve. So you can see we already have a curve here. So this is going to be we're going to add a curve. And we're going to call this flaps. All right, and our type is going to be a custom curve. And we're going to make this at 3 points because I want a low, mid, landing and a takeoff. So I want to take off, landing, and normal flight. So I want a 3-point curve. Okay, so you can see I've got 3 points along my curve. And then I'm going to come down here and decide what I want my deflections to actually be. So again, I'm getting nothing here because my curve's set flat. So I'm going to go to, first thing I'm going to do is set for flaps up to make sure that my flap up signal is where I want it to be. So seems to be good right there. That's a nice, I'm going to check my My flap seems good, so I'm gonna set it right there and leave it. Go to my middle, go to my half, and set the deflection there. And so I'm gonna drop down, I'm just gonna give this the eyeball test at first. You can see my flaps coming down as I give it some deflection. Set that for about 35%. And then I'm gonna go all the way to 0, or I mean for my takeoff, my landing flap, and I'm gonna dial that in to probably about 60. All right, and we see now I've got a good landing flap, a takeoff flap, and a normal flight flap. And it's based on the curve. And again, this curve, you can set that for whatever you want, but you wanna make sure your direction's good first and that you fix the weight. Now, if I wanna come back to this and turn my weight all the way up to 100%, I can do that, but I'm gonna need to go in and adjust my curve if I do that. If I'm happy with where these flaps are set, then there's really no reason to change that weight. But if I want to give that 100%, and if I'm not getting enough throw, for instance, then I can go in here and I can turn that weight up to 100%. I'd say use caution, because if you got that 100% and you flip a switch, you could overdrive that servo and burn it out. So that's, I like to take it a little easy and make sure that I'm taking it easy on my servos. Okay, another thing we might want to set is we might not like that servo or that flap coming down in just a very harsh manner. I can slow it down going up and down, and that's with this slow up, slow down feature here. So if I want to slow this down, I can say, let's go to maybe 1.5 seconds for slow up, go down to slow down, go about 1.5 seconds on that as well. Now, when I hit my flap trigger,
flaps half,
I get a
flaps
smoother
down,
deflection.
Flaps half, flaps up.
Now, if by any chance you wanted to change the channel that your flap is going to, like say you don't want channel 5, then you just go down to the very bottom of the screen and change the output to be whatever channel you want. So you could tap that, it'll give you a bunch of selections. Works really well on that default channel. There's no confusion. The more you move that around, the more you could cause confusion. So if it's not necessary, I just recommend that you leave that alone on the default channel 5. All right, so the next thing we're gonna wanna go over is how to set up a elevator mix to your flap, because when you give flaps, you may get a pitch event happening there that you wanna automatically have trimmed out. So you can do an elevator to flap mix. And the way we're gonna do that is we're gonna go into we're in our mixer screen here, and we're gonna tap on the plus and create a mix. And you'll see there's already an elevator to flaps to elevator mix option here. So we're gonna select that, and we're gonna take it down to the last position. And you see now we have a flaps to elevator mix. Now here's the tricky part. So this is why we wanna do a video to show how to do this right. You're gonna want your input to be that flap channel. The flap channel is your input. So when you select that input, you're gonna scroll here to channels, and then select your flaps channel. So now you'll see when I give some flap, it's gonna be tied in, but I'm at 0 right now. So I need to go through and set my mixes so that you'll see it's really, really flat. So that's the first thing we'll do is we'll turn that weight up to 100 and see if we start to get some movement here as we hit our flap switch. So now you can see as I hit my flap switch, I'm getting movement back in my tail. So it's doing what I want it to do. Now, your direction can be corrected in your points configuration, just like we did with flaps. The way it's set right now is when I give flap, I'm getting some nose up. So that's assuming my flap's gonna push my nose down. Well, sometimes flaps push your nose up, and so you wanna give down trim. So we're gonna do that in the points configuration. So we're just gonna come up here to the curve drop-down arrow, and we're gonna create a curve. We're gonna hit the curve there. We're gonna edit that curve, and you've got a custom 3-point curve here. So you can set this up however you want. I can go in here and really make this whatever I want. I can make it go any direction I want. I can flatten these out. I can do really anything I want here on this curve, just like I did with my flaps. And that then allows me to customize how much my elevator trims when I move my flap switch. So, and you see, I'm also getting a smooth movement there because it's tied to that channel. If you tie it directly to the flap switch, you'll get a very harsh movement in your elevator when you're getting a smooth movement in your flap, and that can cause you some violent motion there if you've got a lot of trim set in. So by tying it to the channel, you get a much smoother movement in your tail than you would if you just use the flap switch. Okay, so just as a review, we're going to need to edit that flap mix to go in there and have it do whatever I want to do. Obviously, that's where we're going to set the weight. Remember, we've got a weight that we need to make sure is what we want. And then we're going to edit our curve, and that will allow us to go in and set up whatever curve we want here for how we want the deflection to work on our flaps. It's all done here in the curve setting. And then for the elevator mix, you'll need to create a mix. There's a flaps elevator mix that's already in there for you. Then we're just going to go in and tie it to that flap channel, not the switch. Tie it to the flap channel. You can tie it to the switch. It will work that way, but you'll get a very harsh movement on your flap. It won't be smooth. This way it ties it directly in with the channel. Whatever that channel is doing, the elevator will do it too. So that's really the best way to do it, and I really recommend that. You got to check your weight, make sure your weight's the way you want, and then edit your curve, and that's how you're going to go in and set up your points configuration to be whatever you want deflection on your elevator with when you flip your flap switch. So here's how you're going to set that all up and trim it and make sure it's what you want. So I hope that works for you. Let me know if you have any questions or thoughts in the comments, and happy and safe flying.